I'm Letha Filderman. I'm the president of PopTech, and I'm going to turn everything over to my colleague and wonderful collaborator on the Nuclear Mixer series, which this is the kickoff event, to Sarah. And she's going to take it from here, and I'll rejoin you in just a little bit. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Letha. Hello, everyone. So glad that you're all joining us. I will ask, but I think you've all done this because I know this isn't your first Zoom call. But those of you that are not speaking, if you could all mute yourselves, that would be quite wonderful. So on behalf of N Square and PopTech, I'm so delighted you could all join us today. I'm bad. I didn't bring a drink. I have water, but that's for medical reasons. But that shouldn't stop you all from enjoying your drink. So cheers to all of you. I'm so thrilled to be co-hosting this with Letha from PopTech. She's been a real friend, a real collaborator, and a thought partner to N Square. So my name is Sarah Kuchesfahani, and I'm the director of the N Square DC Hub. N Square is a funders collaborative that was created in 2014 to introduce innovation and creative thinking into the nuclear risk reduction space. And as Letha mentioned, this is the first N Square PopTech virtual nuclear mixer. Now, when we were planning this series, the intention was for us to all kind of gather together collectively in person in Washington, DC, but we know that can't happen. But you know, in the interest of looking for a silver lining, the nice thing about doing this virtually is that we can bring everyone from all over the country, if not the world, to join us. So we're super excited about that. Now, these nuclear mixers are aimed at increasing intersectional opportunities within the nuclear risk reduction space, as well as provide paths to broader public engagement. Specifically, the goal of these mixers is to demonstrate the power of artistic and creative expression as tools for understanding a complex global issue such as nuclear weapons. So what do we have in store for you for the next hour? Well, we have three phenomenal speakers who are going to speak for no more than 4 minutes. Then Letha will moderate a very brief discussion. Then we're going to put you all to work because we're going to send you off into small breakout rooms with about 3 or 4 people. You're going to spend 5 to 8 minutes, hopefully with a room full of strangers, where you get to participate, contribute, and reflect upon what you've just heard. We will then come back and we're going to share some of your reflections and your questions together before we wrap up at 4:30. So let me give my thanks to my co-hosts, to the speakers, and of course to all of you. So of course, thank you to Letha. I also want to give a shout out to Nick Martin. He has been our fantastic producer. He is the CEO and founder of Tech Change, and him and his colleague Lisa have been super helpful in kind of running the back channels as far as Zoom is concerned, and will be super instrumental in the breakout rooms. Of course, I'd like to say a warm thank you to our wonderful panelists. We have Pedro Alonzo, a Boston-based independent curator, Rachel Bronson from the Bulletin of the Atomic Sciences, and Pedro Reyes, a Mexican artist. And of course, I would be remiss to not say thank you to all of you who have tuned in. And you've all really put, you know, the real meaning of the word mix in this nuclear mixer. We have so many variety of people. We have students, we have some representatives from the nuclear risk reduction space, we have journalists, we have artists, it's just amazing. So without you, we couldn't have really made this a nuclear mixer. So again, let me cheers to you all, welcome you to all to the Amnesia Atomica event, and now I will gladly hand it over to Pedro Alonzo. It's all you, Pedro.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, it's great to be here. And I wanted to start with the challenge, right? And I think the biggest challenge with nuclear risk and nuclear reduction is the fact that we don't feel any fear, right? There are many other things that we're worried about, especially now with the pandemic, but before that, really with climate change and politics. So when I was first asked to participate with N Squared, I have to confess, I didn't see any urgency. I was apathetic about the risk, and I wasn't so motivated, honestly. But it wasn't until I met the people at N Squared and the people that they brought together. I knew Letha from PopTech. I sat next to Erica Gregory at a dinner, and met really great people. And I realized that this great group of people were together for a reason. I was also very impressed with what they had put together. And I was very interested in figuring out how something like this would work. And as I became involved, I had some guidance from Erica Gregory, who suggested that I meet certain people. And she introduced me to Beatrice Finn, who won the Nobel Peace Prize. She also suggested that I get to know Rahzel Bronson from the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. And this meeting these people, participating in the working groups, I began to think about, well, what can I do? This is a very compelling subject, and how can I get involved? And I'm all about public art, but I do my best work with the right partners. And in this case, it became clear to me that the right partner was Rahzel at the Bulletin. And before I went to Chicago, I called her up and said, I'm coming. I'd love to get together with you and talk about an idea about public art, which she was very interested in. I made that call from Mexico City during the art fair a year ago, actually. And I hung up the phone and I walked into the art fair and I started looking for Pedro Reyes, because I already had a feeling that he would be an interesting artist to talk to about this project. And I was overwhelmed when I realized that not only was he interested in the topic, he was very knowledgeable as well. And so when I got to Chicago, I already had an artist to talk to Rahzel about. And so this is serendipitous. It all worked out. But I think the most important thing is this idea of bringing the right people together to get across the urgency of the problem, the need of to address nuclear risk. And I think that the public art is very well suited to do this, because art has that ability to get past people's preconceived notions and help them, the public, understand the gravity of a complex situation. So I will leave it at that. And I think Rachel's next.
Great, thank you. So I think that's my cue. Thank you, Pedro. I was asked to talk a little bit about the framing of this. And I had been noodling in my head that 2020 was such an important 70th anniversary year, the 75th anniversary of the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but also the 50th anniversary of the NPT, the cornerstone of arms control, and from which we had about 40 years of very intense arms control that made the world a safer place, and that we were going to meet in New York for the 50th, and that no one was going to pay any attention to it, that it was just going to pass by, in part because who was talking about nuclear issues and how could the public get engaged? And so what I was talking to Pedro about was, how do we engage the public and let them know that leaders in the UN are talking about the most fundamental issues of arms control and nuclear issues, and pay attention to it and create a news hook, if you will. Because my fear was this meeting was going to happen and the news would, Pedro knows this, what image were they going to show? They were going to show the UN and the flags kind of moving in the wind, the most boring image. And even if you wanted to tell the story, there was just nothing to say, and because they didn't have the hook. So I was like, Pedro, like, how do we give them a hook? What's the hook we can create? And so we had the date, and we had the NPT, the review conference. We had the place. And this is where, like, the magnificence of this kinds of partnership works, where he was like, oh, well, funny you should say that. I have the artist. And, enter Pedro Reyes. And then it was so easy for him. He's like, oh yeah, and I can get us Times Square. I mean, I laughed, right? That's ludicrous. But what was so amazing about these partnerships is things that seemed ludicrous to me, these guys could just do, like, they're like, oh, we'll get Times Square. But I think vice versa as well, which was things that they thought like, well, you know, how do we kind of find out like who in the UN can help us? And I was like, well, we'll just call the people that we work with in, you know, the disarmament office, or like, well, so between us, whatever seemed hard, the other one that was just like, you could blink and get it done. And so like the magnificence of all this audacious idea that we had just kind of kept slipping into place. And you'll all appreciate this. You know, when I talk about it to my team or my board or whoever, what we were doing, I almost like couldn't talk about it because it was so unlikely. And yet it kept happening. It kept happening. It just kept driving at it. And I think, and we can get into this in Q&A, there was an aspect for me of Pedro Reyes and Pedro Alonzo coming up with an image. And I had decided like that was their prerogative. They knew what would sell. They knew what would connect with audiences. That wasn't my forte, that was theirs. But what I came to learn is we still needed to bring our expertise to that conversation, to understand where those sensitivities might be, not because we'd run away from them, but because we could address them up front. And so an example was like, what would the Hibakushu think about this? We came to that late with help from our community, but we began addressing that. So with that, I want to turn it over to Pedro Reyes to talk about how we address this. So Pedro, over to you.
Hi, Rachel. Thank you. Well, upon like this invitation by both my tocayo Pedro Alonzo and Rachel to do this project, my first kind of reaction was to bring up the Tlatelolco Treaty, which was signed in 1967 at the Tlatelolco Square, which you have been seeing in the images that we're sharing, because this is the place where you know, like, the journey for nuclear disarmament started by creating the largest nuclear-free zone in the world by the leadership of Alfonso Garcia Robles, which was a diplomat that persuaded all countries in Latin America and the Caribbean to never store or build or use nuclear weapons. And that was a blueprint for other areas in the world that have created also nuclear-free zones. And this is a kind of unfinished task, because basically what brings us together is the ultimate goal of abolishing nuclear weapons. It's you know, if something we can learn from the COVID pandemic is that we have a number of situations which we'll be facing in the future that we can prevent and that we can stop. And one of those things that we have control over, if we mobilize, is nuclear weapons. No, it's something that is behind the spirit of this project. And also it was very nice to have this kind of first installment on February 14. When I see these pictures, obviously there was like a moment where we're so happy that we managed to do it just before the pandemic, because we don't know when we're gonna be able to put together like a dance in public square and people gathering and a music band, etc. I have to give a kudos to everyone who participated in the project. The inflatable was developed by my student collaboration with Pablo Kobayashi. My wife, Carla Fernandez, designed the outfits for the dancers, which are a fantastic company called Noboards that created a choreography that was like very moving, very, you know, it was sad because, you know, our theme is nuclear apocalypse. So, you know, the choreography really took on the challenge to convey not with a rational level, but like an emotional level, which is what dance can do and art can do. The sense of despair and drama that I remember growing up as a kid in the 70s and 80s. The nuclear Armageddon was like very present, and we have tried to use art to convey to the newer generations that are not so acquainted with this issue that the problem is not hasn't gone anywhere. That actually, and this is like what really resonated when we started working with the bulletin, that the doomsday clock is 100 seconds from midnight. No, and if you see all the news and everything that has happened in the last week, the call of for this sense of urgency that the bulletin did at the beginning of the year really resonates with the kind of very worrisome events that are taking place in these last days. So basically, I believe that there's a lot of work to be done, that we will continue to work on this project in like adapting and working on different ways. But I think that there's something that is important for activists, because we are in a moment where it seems that the pandemic has taken up all the kind of mental space that people can handle. But all the other problems that we've been working for to solve are still there, and they need us more than ever. So I think that as a kind of a community, kind of concerned with the issue of nuclear war and the urgent need to disarm, we have to just like continue working on bringing more people to join us on this cause. Yeah, I don't know if I should add something more, but I think that we're over on time, no?
Yes, I'm super impressed. Thank you all. Letha, all you.
We're perfectly on time, so thank you all. And what we're trying to accomplish here is, giving everybody a taste of this project, really, because it's enormous. And I think so many things, I was taking notes while Pedro, Rachel, and Pedro were speaking, and I think what this project does is it really brings to the fore the importance of this notion of unconventional collaboration. And I know that gets a bit overused to the point where you almost go, oh, jargon. But there really is something in that. And I think the only way that happens is when you really take the time to build diverse networks that have very different types of expertise, and then actually activate them and leverage those folks in your network. So a lot of times people say, well, like, really, how does PopTech do some of that stuff? And it's, all comes down to the extreme yenta skills. So I'll go back to my Yiddish speaking grandmother, and there's something to be said for being an astute matchmaker. And I when I look at this project, I always just almost burst into this sense of proud whoa, look what the kids are all doing, they pulled it off, because I knew Pedro Alonzo, and by happenstance said, oh, he'd be a great person to invite to this dinner I was hosting with Erica. And then suddenly Erica introduces him to Rachel. So it's just chain of event that's fascinating. And I will say, we've at PopTech, we've worked on some of the toughest challenges that confront humanity over time. And the real magic has always come when we bring people who are not working in the same areas together. And Rachel said something, she said, I loved working with artists because anything's possible. And that's a mentality that sometimes those of us who work in policy or even in science go, oh, that's not possible. So having contrarian thinkers, and at literally 4 4:18 today, we were like, how do we show Pedro's video? And we're like, oh gosh, it's going to be 12 minutes. How do we do that? And he solved it. He's like, just let's show it in the background while we're all talking. So voila, there you have it, with different kinds of thinking. And I loved Rachel's comment, the magnificence factor. Just the perfect anecdote to what we all need right now. But I do want to ask, because everybody spoke so briefly, a couple questions. So I'm going to start with you, Rachel, if you don't mind. And as you think about this project traveling around the world, which, you know, and as hopefully we get to a point where we can have people convening around public art and public spaces, can you talk a little bit about some of the thoughts you've had and how this might impact different audiences? And I'm going to go back to a story you shared with me about some thinking you were doing around people who were survivors of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and how people who actually experienced the devastation firsthand of nuclear war, they perceive a mushroom cloud very differently.
Yeah, and shout out to our friends, Carl and Kareem at Carnegie, for really pushing us in this direction. We had created, so Pedro had created this, and I was getting at this in my comments. He'd created this, and we were really excited to bring it to New York, and with the urging of Carl and Kareem, they said, just check this out, you know, and how you're going to have the survivors in New York at the time. How may they and others perceive it? And we did. And it was immediately negative, and very strongly so. And many of you on the call will know this, but it was important to hear, which is when they see a mushroom cloud, that's kind of what the international community saw. What they saw literally on the ground was something very different. And that image of the mushroom cloud for many survivors is distracting from the terror on the ground. And so it's not really appreciated, and it wouldn't have been welcome. And, you know, we were already done and committed. And so that was very rough to hear. And I brought that back to Pedro Alonzo. I was like, what are we going to do about this? And again, like immediately first of all, and he can talk about this, he's like, oh, this always happens in art projects, right? There's always a community that doesn't like it. And there are ways to engage them or find openings and opportunities to kind of express their concerns. And suddenly it became additive to this art project, because what we had imagined happening in New York was we would have this in Duffy Square, right, in Times Square. And our hope was that as we solidified it, many of you on the call, we would have been reaching out to say, can we set up kiosks? Can we set up desks? Like hand out flyers, people who are walking through Times Square. Like, let's tell them about what we're doing, and finding different ways for people who were saying, what is this? Why is there a mushroom cloud in Times Square? We could tell them about the UN, and then they're like, what do we do? And we could spring them on all of us there with desks and clipboards to help engage them. And so we started thinking about the Hibakushu and their concern that what they experienced on the ground was different, and we would literally be on the ground. So could we find ways for them to communicate exactly that message, so it wasn't bifurcated between the mushroom cloud and what was on the ground? Through this artistic endeavor, we could actually bring those two together. And we brought that idea back to some key players who immediately loved it. And that's kind of where the conversation stopped because of the pandemic. But we were clearly on the cusp of breaking through this and making the art piece even more, having greater impact because of our ability to absorb the critique. So the tension and the stress of that, the need to bring both the expertise from our community together with the artistic expression and the artist's view of like, this wasn't an unexpected challenge for Pedro. This was just like yet another part of his like already busy day. So It was very interesting, and we're just so sorry it wasn't able to come together in November as we had hoped, in May, not November, in May as we had hoped.
Wonderful. Thank you, Rachel. And Pedro Reyes, I'm going to turn over to you, and we're going to I'd like you to take about 2 minutes to talk a little bit about your past work, because you have looked at all kinds of major issues and crises and challenges for humanity through your artwork. And can you just give us a little primer of a couple things you've done that kind of led you up to this?
Well, I think that I have dealt with the issue of disarmament since 12 years or 13 years, but it has been mainly with small weapons. I have organized campaigns for voluntary donation of weapons. The first one in 2007, where we collected 1,500 guns that were made into 1,500 shovels, and we planted 1,500 trees. So that was like the kind of a very basic, like a sculpture is about changing matter, no? Like changing the shape of matter. So to turn a gun that was like then a weapon, a shovel, is a kind of alchemical process. And that first led to a second project called Disarm, which where I made musical instruments out of weapons. But the issue of nuclear weapons is one that I feel very close and very I have always wanted to work on it, and I'm very grateful and happy to be able to help on this cause together with all the other artists, because this has been a kind of a collective undertaking by everyone who has participated, not only me, but the dancers, the musicians, the costume designers, etc. And the idea is precisely to create a platform where more people can join, because I believe that one of the most inspiring things is to see how big the nuclear disarmament movement was in the 70s and 80s, and how urgent it is to bring that spirit of creativity and activism together now.
Fabulous, thank you. And Pedro, I would like you to just take a minute to, kind of sum up how you use creative expression to take on so many major issues. And you've talked a little bit about what attracted you to this project, but you deal in this all the time. What's the magic?
Which Pedro?
You.
Oh, okay.
Pedro A.
Pedro A. Well, I'm it's easier to do projects. It's easier isn't the right word, but I'm more compelled and energized and excited to do projects that I find real meaning about, that make a change, that have an impact. And one of the things that made me think of Pedro Reyes, my tocayo, is precisely the works he mentioned, because he developed a tactical approach where we went beyond a symbol, we went beyond representing an issue, but really making tangible change. So you can count 1,500 trees in Sinaloa, Mexico, that were planted because of his project, and that is a concrete change. And I think that's very important. The other thing I'm very excited about with this project is the fact that this project, the role of the expert, in this case Rachel and the bulletin, is integral to the project. And I've never done that before. And I think that part of the reason N Square was started was because of the difficulty the nuclear community was having creating narratives to reach a broader audience. But I think that the role of experts is critical, because without Rachel, it never would have occurred to us to do it during the MPT. It never would have occurred to us that this was important because it visualized the consequences of inaction, or that, you know, it was critical to have an image for the press to grab onto, to, you know, to transmit across the world and call attention to the problem.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm going to turn it over now to my colleague Nick Martin from Tech Change. He's going to send us all off to breakout rooms to have a little short discussion, and then he'll give us some instruction for re-entering this space together to share some of our thoughts.
Hello, hello. Welcome back. Look at the group. Fantastic.
I'm at.
All right. So now the great challenge is everybody's not on mute and is now back in the big room. So that will be the big test, is how many people have phenomenal background noise going on. All right. So Letha, as folks come back in here, kind of, how would you like to do this? Kind of open up the floor, maybe have a couple groups sort of share some reflections. We won't have time for everybody, but a couple reflections or things that might have come up in these small groups that would be good to capture for the large group.
Absolutely, and I think, you know, we want to be democratic here, so I guess if you'd like to share a reflection or a question from your group, we didn't have time to elect spokespersons, but I know my group had a bunch of naturals, so if people could just perhaps raise their hand and Nick can call on you, but please keep the reflection or comment to about 45 seconds so we can make room for as many of you to speak as possible.
Yeah, we'll keep these pretty quick. And I think two ways to do it. You can either use the reactions down on the bottom bar, to maybe you've already had some practice with those, or you could use, just as Mary Jane is doing, just raising your hand in your screen, and I can also find you. So Mary Jane, since I see you first, I may turn it over to you.
Okay, great. I want to pivot off of Letha's comment about diverse networks that can be leveraged, and how doing that can help address what's my more than pet peeve about issue-based public art, which I also do as a curator, which is that we do great stuff, we're right, and then it goes nowhere because we're not working in what others call the real world. So how we need these networks and intersections. So I'm happy that I was in a group with Erica Gregory. We leveraged it. We're on to developing an idea for a workshop to train students in how to think about the future.
How awesome. I love it.
If you gave us another 10 minutes, we'd be completely done. Okay.
Who knows what would happen? Let's hear from some more folks. Who's ready?
Robert Fry has his hand raised. I don't know if you could see that, Nick.
Okay.
But let's go for it.
I'm a documentary producer, and I discovered that my roommate on the site was Yasmin, and she is involved with a program called BeyondTheBomb.org, dealing with social justice. And we also discovered we're about 20 blocks from each other in New York. But the contribution I'd like to make to your earlier discussion, having made a couple of documentaries on this topic, I want to read a quote to you from one of my films. And it was by a gentleman by the name of Dr. Hida, who was a Habakasha who passed on at the age of 102. And he said in the film, "People in Hiroshima never call it a mushroom cloud. We call it a pillar of fire. Those who only saw aftermath only saw the mushroom cloud. I was at the foot of the pillar of fire." Anyway, for your project, I think that quote would have some significance.
Wow. Very
And
powerful.
also Yasmin may have something else to say.
Very powerful. Yasmin.
Thanks.
You're on.
Let's hear from some more folks. Yeah, who else would like to share some reflections from their small group, something that happened, or maybe a cool output that occurred?
Pedro Reyes.
I was
I think you're on mute, Pedro.
sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I was listening to, the comment of Mary Jane Jacob about, how to give the intersectional dimension to this issue, because that was kind of one of the discussions in my breakout room about like these kind of perceptions. And I recall that early this year, when I was looking at the images of the ICANN forum in Paris, there was the presence of a Native American who was affected by radiation because a lot of atomic tests happened in reservations, and there's still radiation in these places. So I think that it's very important to kind of refresh the nuclear conversation if it's mixed, like talking about like a nuclear mixer, if it's mixed with other agendas such as gender or race or etc. No, so there's this term, nuclear colonialism, that has to do with the issue of tests, which is very, very pertinent, and which we could use nowadays, that in this precise moment where Trump wants to make a nuclear test again.
Oh.
Thank you so much, Pedro. Other thoughts or reflections from the group? I'm told that Martin or Joan might have something interesting to contribute as well. Not to put you on the spot, but you have been flagged as potential contributors.
Well, I'd love to jump in if I could. I mean, first, just to say hi to everybody, friends who I see whom I haven't seen in months. It's it's wonderful to see all of you. And let me just say to those of you, the Pedros and Rachel Bronson and N Square, all of whom helped enable and create this fantastic project, that it's such an inspiration. It's really incredible to see. I remember when the idea was birthed over a year ago, and we've been really excited to see its realization. And so this is, I wish I could be in person watching it. Wish I could have seen this up in New York, but I'm sure there will be a point in the future when I have that opportunity. But first, heartfelt thanks to you guys for your creativity and your persistence to bring this to us. I was paired in the breakout room with Jaime Palacios Anaya, and pardon me if I've mispronounced your name, but Jaime has been studying architecture at Columbia University, and with a focus on art in public spaces, and was interested in this installation. And for me, it's really exciting to meet a newcomer to this issue space. And my question to everyone on this call is, how do we keep new people who are attracted, who become interested in this issue set when they connect with this kind of public art? How do we keep them engaged so that they don't say, wow, that's really interesting, and wander away, and they were interested for 5 minutes, but it kind of disappears. So would love to hear folks' thoughts if anyone has good ideas for how we continue to engage smart, interested people like Jaime.
Kudos to that. Martin, any thoughts on your end?
Yeah, well, I was in a group with, can you hear me? Am I muted? You can hear me? Good. I was in a group with several artists. Imagine that. And we talked a little bit about how can art be the tipping point? How can art be the pivot in order to, move populations to change, change what's happening, that cultural shift that we need. And I thought Pamela E had a great, from Mexico City, we had an international group in our little breakout room, which is fun. And I thought Pamela E had a great comment, which is the art that's most effective is the art that slaps you in the face.
I love that. I see, Jaime, you're nodding a lot, so I don't know if you wanna say something.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, personally, I'm not too knowledgeable in terms of nuclear weapons, but definitely seeing this piece was something that caught my attention. And since then, I've become more aware of like the things that have been happening. And I was just talking with Joanne in my breakout room how this pandemic can also serve as a reference to bring the notion that something that happens in one place can affect the whole world, and how can that translate to the nuclear weapons. And I really like this new format of translating something that sometimes is politicized or sometimes it's kept in like the scientific realm, but having it like broadening the boundaries of that single origin can help different people engage with this topic and like raise the awareness of how this is something crucial for the humankind and for the world, and how this can trigger new ideas and new conversations.
Beautifully said. I've been prompted also to ask Daryl if he might want to say a few words, but I'm also scanning the floor here for other open comments if anybody's ready with something they want to share. Looking here, and Sarah and Letha, feel free to help direct traffic too if you see somebody.
Sure, Nick. A couple thoughts. I mean, I will. I think this will be, when the NPT review conference does happen, be a great way to highlight the issue and engage more people. And in looking at it, listening to the comments, I mean, one of the challenges we have, whether we're activists or artists, researchers, is how, with nuclear weapons, is how to communicate the horror of nuclear weapons, the human impact, the scale, the global effects if they are used today. One thing to keep in mind is Hiroshima was one bomb. It was horrible, one bomb. Today, it's not going to be one bomb. And then at the same time, and this is, I think this goes to the challenge of how to engage people afterwards when they walk away, how to give people hope. And I mean, I think another thing I would just encourage the Pedros to consider is, you know, how in developing further this concept, can you communicate the ability of people to overcome the fear and the danger of nuclear weapons, because it has been done. And that's part of the story of the Habakasha. So I think the thing that strikes me is we need to consider how we give people hope in our activism, in our messaging, and in the art. And I don't have the answers, but I think that's crucial to mobilize action.
Yeah, so important. I see Rachel Brosnan, you wanted to share a few reflections based on that.
Oh, thanks. If there was time, I certainly had my time. I think one of the most exciting aspects of this, and I hope it's for everybody in the group, is in the expert community, there's been such tremendous work done, very focused on policymakers. And increasingly now in this group, there's also a lot of grassroots organizations who are working on this. But what I think what I'd love to see come out of this is, in some ways, we've created these two bookends, right? The Bulletin of Atomic Scientists is, you know, one of the places experts look for information. And yet, well, we have these two amazing artists who have given us a new entry point into this. And there's a vast area for so much work to be done that not any one project will be able to answer Daryl and Joan your excellent questions and call. But we should be thinking about now multiple routes, right? Like user journeys, right? We've got two bookends of a user journey, but how do we now use this so that any individual comes in and then they meet the next organization and the next organization and the next expert and the next artist? Because no one project can do it all, but all of us can do something. And starting to create defined user journeys, or ones that we think are successful, I think we have the opportunity with these kind of these two bookends, if you will, is how I'm looking at it. And I think the people on this call are the answer to that in so many ways, and the multiplier effect. So I hope we don't look for the silver bullet, but rather the different directions that it can take.
And I've got some exciting feedback here in the chat. I've got a couple folks who I know want to speak. I'm going to go to Andrea first, then I'm going to go to Cynthia, and we'll see where the time is. But let's make these rapid fire to get as many voices in as we can. Andrea, you first.
Great, thanks. I just wanted to say I'm also a complete newcomer. I come here actually through the arts, through following Pedro's trajectory. And I was listening to John's question about how to keep people who are newcomers, and I was thinking that I guess I would be for sure interested in staying updated in this topic and any attempts for a more peaceful society. But I guess I would love to know what steps can we take as an audience? What can we do, you know, what's the best way for us to be involved? And I think just these clear answers are ways of keeping us for sure involved. That was just it.
No, that's great. Thank you so much for sharing, Andrea. So Cynthia, I'm going to go to you, and then I'm going to squeeze you in as well, Rachel, because I know you've got something you might want to share.
Hi, I wanted to insert into this conversation feminism, because I think it's very important to really address the patriarchal structure of militarism and in the context of, you know, nuclear disarmament. And unless we really contextualize, you know, the policies that are made by men, you know, around nuclear issues and really take a feminist position on disarmament, but also in terms of how we read this, you know, how we read this issue from a feminist perspective. So as policymakers, are there feminists at the table making decisions, determining, you know, our future? And the other piece that I feel is, I'm a filmmaker and I'm working on a film called Index Trace, which is a mapping of the entire nuclear trajectory in the United States, from missiles to nuclear power plants to testing sites to, you know, and it's really working with people who are living on the front lines. And I think the teachers, yes, we have all these policymakers who are embedded within the system, but the teachers, the real teachers who are challenging the protocols are the people on the land, on the people on the front lines who have been for 30, for 40, for 50 years saying our water is contaminated, our land is contaminated. These are the teachers.
Such an important thought there. Thank you so much, Cynthia. So I'm going to go to Rachel, and then I'm going to have us come back to Letha for some kind of closing words with Sarah.
I just wanted to pick up on actually the 3 different threads of these user journeys. How do you create hope and newcomers? I'm someone that's passionate about violence prevention, but nuclear has always felt like something that it would be hard to engage in part because it's so overwhelming. And even the image of a mushroom cloud is hard to get your hands around and think about. And so I think when I think about an art project and when I think about this topic in general, my question is, how do you give someone something that feels achievable, where you feel not just this sense of hopelessness and this matters and I care about it, but some concrete thing that I do will make a difference? And how do you create those inroads where it's not just this big mushroom cloud, but it's all the different impacts of nuclear proliferation, from inequities in testing, right? That's something that I can get my hand around. It's familiar because I see other environmental inequities with pollution and other types of it. So how do we make it feel real and relatable to a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, and help people see all the myriad of ways in which you can contribute? You don't have to be a scientist, right? If you care about this type of justice issue, if you're an artist, how do we help people see inroads that match different skill sets and feel really concrete and doable, but also to that point about hope, where you don't feel like nothing I do will matter because it's this huge mushroom cloud and how can I make a difference in that? But you feel like this small action I take starts to chip away and I see how it fits into something bigger. I think art can help make that real for people.
And I see a lot of nodding heads there, Rachel, so I think you've really touched on something. Okay, Letha and Sarah, I'm going to turn it back to you all to sum us up, to give us our call to action, and where we all go as a community from here.
Sure. Well, let me just say thank you to everyone. I think we, you know, you didn't know this ahead of time, but you were all guinea pigs, because this was the first of a series of mixers that we're going to be doing over the course of the next year or so. So thank you for being game and being such great participants. And we're going to be sending out an email. Sarah and I will join forces on that. That's going to do a number of things. Number one, it's going to give you access to this recorded session, Pedro's film that you saw playing in the background, and then ways to actually get engaged, because we've got wonderful colleagues at N Square that really are looking to expand their network, and most of what I do is just help support that effort. And is Erica still here? Erica Gregory?
Yes, I'm still here.
Can you say hello to everybody? So.
Hello, everybody. Listen, I just chatted something to everybody, which is to say this conversation really does represent something that we sort of dreamt of when we started this project 6 years ago. And you know, the convergence of disciplines and interests in this conversation, I think, is really extraordinary. So I want to thank everybody for participating and thank you all for organizing it. There's so much to say about, you know, what's been learned in this project, from the culture of critique to a value of experimentation and esprit de corps. But the big takeaway for me is that there is tremendous power in just the genuine goodness of the people involved in this project, and in a spirit of love. There is something operative, I think, in working with the two Pedros that has to do with a real belief in what human beings can do together. And so I want to thank you all. And I know a couple of you have reached out to me individually. We will reach back out, I'm sure, Sarah and Letha, with contact information. Please feel free to share my email widely with people, and I look forward to being in touch.
Thank you, Erica. And I'm going to turn it over to Sarah for a quick farewell and just say stay tuned for an invite to the next Nuclear Mixer, which will be in July at the height of summer, hopefully.
Yes, and so because I'm such a stickler for punctuality, it is 5:30, but all I want to say is just echo everything that's already been said. A huge thank you to each and every one of you for showing up, for staying engaged, and for giving us so much to kind of, you know, really think about. And as Letha said, you were really, yes, you are our guinea pigs, but my goodness, you were amazing guinea pigs, and we can't wait to kind of continue this conversation with you in the months ahead. So really, thank you all so very much, and we really appreciate your engagement and your questions. And yeah, stay tuned, there'll be more, and you'll all be invited to all our subsequent events. So thank you all so much, stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you all very soon. And thank you, Nick, and of course, a huge thanks to our wonderful speakers, Rachel, Pedro Alonzo, and Pedro Reyes. Huge thanks to each and every one of you. And yeah, just stay safe. And now I've gone over 60 seconds, so we'll kill this at now. So bye, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Ciao, thanks.
Thank you.
Exit music.
Exit music, right? Yeah.